Hello, viewers. I'm glad you're here today. I want to talk about emergency makgeolli. Now, I was first inspired by Mongchi's emergency kimchi. I thought, well, what if there was a makgeolli emergency and you needed to brew makgeolli in a hurry? What could you do? So it's really a thing. Emergency makgeolli exists. It's a historical fact. People in the past needed makgeolli in a hurry, and they came up with recipes to accomplish this. So before I researched this, I just thought, based on my own brewing experience, what recipe characteristics could result in a faster brew. And I thought, well, brewing at a higher temperature, using more water, using more nuruk, those things could brew faster. Maybe that's part of emergency makgeolli. And so first place I looked, I remembered I'd read this description of fast brewed liquor. So this is the description, or Sokseongju, fast made liquor. And this is from this book. And one of the authors is Park Rok-dam. Note that. Sokseongju is an alcoholic beverage produced by an accelerated brewing process that takes only 1 to 10 days. For unexpected occasions, such as guests visiting or a death in the family, households would make Sokseongju to serve large crowds. Since alcoholic beverages were an essential element of hospitality and ritual ceremonies, Sokseongju was brewed as a stopgap measure when other liquors could not be made in time or an earlier brewing went bad. So this is what it says here. Sokseongju is fermented in a warm temperature for up to 10 days. When it is needed in less than 3 days, nuruk dissolved in water is added to help with faster fermentation. So that's mool nuruk. Mool nuruk, that's a technique. Okay, so that's warm temperature and mool nuruk. One thing to note is that Sokseongju has a short shelf life, but has a pretty good taste for 1 or 2 days. So that last sentence, tells you the drawbacks of brewing in a hurry. It's going to have a short shelf life, and you're going to be happy just that it tastes. If it tastes pretty good, you'll be happy because you were in a big rush. So is Sokseongju emergency makgeolli? So I wanted to look at this in more detail. So I looked at the Encyclopedia of Korean Folk Culture. So this goes into more detail. For example, there's different categories of fast-made wine. There's 1-day wine, ilju. There's 3-day wine, samilju. There's 7-day wine, chililju. There's even 11-day wine. Well, which from the previous definition that's more than 10 days. I'm not sure why it's exactly included in here, or if is 10 days the real number. I'm not sure. Just reading through this article, I realized there are so many recipes for fast-made wine. And they have many different names. For example, gemyeongju, rooster's crow. That's how fast it's done. Or just summer ihwaju. There's even a ihwaju that only takes 1 day. So that's crazy. That's crazy. And for 3-day wines, the samilju, here's a name that really means emergency makgeolli. It's gupshiju. So that's urgent in terms of time, urgent time wine. That really is emergency makgeolli. So if you've watched recipes on my channel before, you already know that Danyangju could be done in less than 10 days. If it's warm enough, ordinary single stage makgeolli recipe, it's going to be done in less than 10 days. So that's already an example of Sokseongju. But these recipes in particular speed it up even more. So look at some of these. So I looked at some of the details of these recipes, and I noticed that some of these recipes are even two-stage recipes. They often involve mul nuruk, the soaking the nuruk in water, or the sugok method, just using the liquid from that for fermentation, and also often warmer fermentation. These are usually summertime recipes. And when they're not summertime recipes, they say things like put the brewing container directly on the ondol, the warm floor, which is something. Yeah, so this breaks the normal rules of fermenting makgeolli. In fact, many of these recipes break rules. So I have to throw all the rules out that I normally follow because these follow a different set of rules. You're in a hurry. You're not following the normal makgeolli brewing rules. For example, there are many recipes with no godubap, just rice flour, for example, just juk. You can brew with just juk. Well, that breaks my rules. But if I want makgeolli in a hurry, if it's an emergency, I have to break my rules. So I looked at a list of historical recipes for ililju, one-day wine, and these recipes, they usually use mepsal, regular rice, rather than chapsal, the sweet rice. They do use between 15 and 25% nuruk compared with the amount of rice, usually 20%. So that's more than normal. Normal amount would be 10%. And they often add a cup of previously brewed makgeolli. So that's sort of a shortcut to doing like a multi-stage recipe. You're in a hurry, so you add some makgeolli that's fresh that you've already brewed. Well, then you already have a lot of yeast available for your brew. So that's an interesting technique. And you do place it in a hot place to ferment, so either summertime or in a warm, very warm spot in the winter. And it's mostly godubap, but some juk. Let's look at this one in particular. This is one that I want to follow. I will brew this recipe and see if it works. So this is a juk recipe. So I'm going to try this in an upcoming video. Now let's look at the list for Samilju, the 3-day wine. There's plenty of recipes here too, and these use between 10 and 40% nuruk, but again, it's usually 20% nuruk compared with the amount of rice. And a good number of them use a cup of previously brewed makgeolli, but many of them don't. Most of them don't. And the rice cooking techniques are varied. There's godubap, there's juk, there's bambak, there's baksalgi. But this is the one I'm thinking of trying for a 3-day wine. This one, which is another juk recipe. So I want to focus on the juk recipes because it's something I haven't been successful with before. When I tasted a brew I made with only juk, it tasted really bad. So I'm interested in how these recipes will turn out. Will they work? So that's my plan. I want to try to make some emergency makgeolli. I'll try to make a 1-day wine and a 3-day wine with only juk. See if that's possible. And I know this is in direct opposition to a recent video I made, explaining where you should follow the pace of the fermentation and not rush things. And that, in general, is good advice. If you can follow the seasons and brew appropriately for the temperature of the season, that is a good idea. But sometimes it's only sometimes you're just in a rush and you have to get makgeolli in a hurry. So you're going to need an emergency makgeolli recipe. Well, I'd better learn those techniques too. So yeah, so that's what we're going to try in upcoming videos. Are these 1 day and 3 day wines? Look forward to that. Let me know what you think. Thank you for watching.